This is the Dogs on the Hill podcast with your host, Reeves Fisackerly. Welcome back to the Dogs on the Hill podcast. I'm your host, Reeves Fisackerly, and it's been a while. Today is Saturday, May 20th. It's about 2 p.m. Central Time, and I think it's been almost a full month since I've had an episode, and for that, I'm going to go ahead and say sorry. I apologize. Got busy finishing up finals, and then I did some traveling, but I am back. And if you are watching the video version or the video format of this podcast, you can see I'm in a new environment. I don't have a microphone. I'm talking into my phone. This is a temporary setup. We're not in the studio for the time being, but the show goes on. We're going to keep on rolling. So, as opposed to just recapping an entire month's worth of sports, let's just jump into what's happening right now. Let's stay relevant, and let's kick things off with the NBA playoffs. So, the NBA playoffs, we are in the conference final stages, and both series are 2-0 leads. The Miami Heat, as the 8 seed, have a 2-0 series lead on the 2 seed Boston Celtics. And the Denver Nuggets, the 1 seed, have a 2-0 lead on the 7 seed Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the Lakers and the Nuggets play again tonight. That is Game 3 in Los Angeles at Crypto.com Arena. According to ESPN, the Lakers actually have a 55% chance of winning this matchup, and Vegas has the spread in favor of Los Angeles, -5.5, with a money line of -215. This series, despite being a 2-0 lead for the Nuggets, who, in my opinion and in most people's opinion, are most definitely the favorites in this series, has been close. Game 1 looked really ugly for the Lakers. There was, at one point, they were down by 22, which is never good. I was out with my buddies, 2 of us. We were at a restaurant, just chilling out, watching the game. They had it on a giant projector screen. We were actually in San Diego, so we were close to that fan base, and it was rough. So we sat there for a little bit, but we left kind of midway through the fourth quarter. The Lakers did catch up. I think they got it to within 8 when we decided to leave. And as we were running home, we saw that they had got it within, I believe, 4. But too little too late, the Nuggets took a Game 1 win. And then they took a Game 2 win, 108-103, a game in which the Lakers led most, if not all, of the game. And then the Nuggets just exploded. I don't know if we wanted to say that the Nuggets exploded at the end or the Lakers imploded at the end. But regardless, the Nuggets took the first 2 games in their home barn. If you're the Nuggets, you feel fantastic because, I mean, if it goes to 7, well, you have home court and you've won your home games. And also, it's just never a bad thing to have a 2-0 series lead. That's a very ideal, good position to be in. If you're the Lakers, you definitely wanted to win one of those games. And that Game 2 loss most definitely hurts. When you are the away team in a best-of-7 series, you definitely want to minimum split those first 2 games on the road. Have it tied 1 apiece when you go into your home barn. And I think the Lakers had a fantastic chance of doing that in Game 2 the other night, but they couldn't close it. So they are favored to win tonight, as I have already discussed. That game is on primetime TV, 7:30 p.m. Central on ABC. And I think the Lakers could win this game. I'm going to pick the Lakers to win Game 3. I think they looked really good in that last game, and they were even able to muster up enough strength to make it at least interesting at the end of Game 1. This will be a good series. It already has proven to be a good series. It's just a matter of how long is it going to be? I think if you look at this series on paper, when you see Denver leads 2-0, it basically says like, oh, this is not a close series at all. But that's not the case. These have been very close games. If we look at the final scores, Game 1, 132-126. Lakers were down 22, made it interesting at the end. Game 2, Lakers led the whole thing and then lost by 5, 108 to 103. What's scary for the Lakers is being down 2-0. Hopefully the Lakers can muster up something. LeBron can continue to make that push for ring number 5, and we'll see what they can do. Game 3 is tonight. So in the NHL, we're also in the conference finals. The Eastern Conference Finals started 2 days ago with the Panthers and the Hurricanes. The Panthers won that game in dramatic fashion. Game is tied 2-2 at the end of regulation. We go into overtime, and Florida just pops one in near the end of that first overtime period. Looks like that's it. Game's over. Well, goal gets called off for goaltender interference on Sergei Bobrovsky, and that call ended up making the game last another hour, 2 hours. Game 1 went into 4 overtimes, and finally Matthew Tkachuk was the one who ended it about a minute in to the 4th overtime period. So the Panthers took a Game 1 win on the road 3-2 in the 4th overtime. Sergei Bobrovsky had 63 saves on 65 shots. The game started at 8 p.m. local time and ended around 2 in the morning. So 6 hours of hockey, 7 periods of hockey. That was on Thursday night, and Saturday night we're back in PNC Arena for Game 2. Currently, the money line favors Carolina. It's minus 155 with an over-under of 5.5. That game is at 7 p.m. Central Time tonight on TNT. And, man, it's really hard to pick against the Panthers. This has been a fascinating playoffs because we were faced with the Final Four of Vegas, Dallas, Florida, and Carolina. They're all southern market teams, and I mean, if you don't want to say Vegas is southern market, well, it's in the middle of the desert. Non-typical hockey markets, non-original 6 teams, fan bases, franchises participating in the Final Four of the playoffs this year. So this is great for the growth of the sport because these markets are getting exposure. These smaller markets are having their fans see productive playoff hockey. But back to the Panthers. They played the Bruins in round 1, who everybody, including myself, was pretty much counting them out because the Bruins had the best regular season in the history of the NHL, winning 65 games. And then the Panthers went in 7 after the Bruins went up 3-1 and choked it. And then the Panthers won the first 3 games in round 2 against the Toronto Maple Leafs and ended up winning that series in 5, and now take a 1-0 lead against the Carolina Hurricanes. And the Panthers are the lowest seed in the playoffs. This is ridiculous. The President's Trophy curse is something that a lot of fans buy into. And basically, since 2000, the last team to win the President's Trophy, which is the best regular season record, and the Stanley Cup was the Blackhawks in 2013. Since then, teams who have won the President's Trophy usually lose in about the first or the second round of the playoffs. Now, what we have seen is in the last couple of years, the team that wins the President's Trophy wins the Stanley Cup the following season. The Tampa Bay Lightning had their historic, at the time, 62-win season in 2019, lost in the first round, won the Stanley Cup in 2020. Colorado Avalanche won the President's Trophy in 2021, lose in the playoffs, win the Stanley Cup in 2022. Florida Panthers won the President's Trophy in 2022, lost in the second round in the playoffs that year, and they currently have a 1-0 lead in the Eastern Conference Final of the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm not saying the Panthers are winning the Stanley Cup. I'm just saying this is a trend that exists, and the Panthers are playing really, really good hockey right now. With that being said, it would be unfair of me to completely just discount the Hurricanes. I said at the beginning of the playoffs, when I made my brackets through the Excel sheet and the data studies, I said that the Hurricanes were the second best team in the playoffs, and they are still very much alive in this. They lost 1 game to start it, which is definitely not ideal. But if you win tonight, you have the series tied at 2-2, and then you go on the road. So not a bad situation to be in. I would say I'm going to go with the Hurricanes tonight. I have enough confidence in them to be fired up about that loss. And want to put on a show in front of their home fans. That being said, here's another thing that goes in favor for the Panthers if you want to bet on them to win tonight. The Panthers and the Hurricanes just played 7 periods of hockey. That is exhausting. They played for 6 hours. They played over 2 games in the same night. And the Panthers came away with that game, and the Panthers came away from that game with a win. The Hurricanes came away from that game with nothing. They lost. So the Panthers could ride that high into tonight, pick up another win on the road, and boom, here you are, Panthers 2-0 lead, going home. Similar situation with when they played Toronto last series. So I really feel like this game could go either way. I'm going to give it to the Hurricanes just because I don't want to count them out yet. I think I'm confident enough in them to get it done tonight. And Eastern Conference Final looks like it's going to be a good series. All right, we're going to shift gears here, and we're going to actually shift countries here. We're going to go over to England, and we're going to look at the English Premier League. So Manchester City, having a phenomenal year, has clinched the Premier League title after Arsenal lost. Now, Manchester City has a record of 27-4-4. Arsenal with a record of 25-6-6. Man City has 3 more games in the regular season left to play. Arsenal has 1. So Man City basically clinched it off that Arsenal loss. Another fun thing going on for Manchester City right now is in the UEFA Champions League, after tying Game 1 of the semifinal with Real Madrid 1-1, they played Game 2 last week, in which they won 4-0 against Real Madrid, winning on aggregate 5-1. They will play Inter Milan on June 10th for the Champions League Final. You'll be able to watch that on CBS if you're in the United States. This is the year for Manchester City to do it. They have, I don't really know what else there is to say about this team. They've spent billions of dollars on this roster. Haaland has set the English Premier League record for most goals in a season in his first season at Manchester City, in his first season as a part of the Premier League. And by the way, he's 22 years old. He's definitely going to usher in the next generation of soccer. He is the next superstar for the sport, if he's not already. And it's really just going to be a matter of, can Man City change the narrative this year? For years, they have always had very successful teams. They've won the Premier League, I think, 5 times out of the last 6 years. This time is the 6th out of the last 7th. They have won trophies, but they can't win the Champions League. And frankly, that's the only one people really care about. So, is this their year? I feel like it should be. Yes, they're obviously the better team on paper than Inter Milan, but they choke so regularly when it comes to this. And Inter Milan is not a bad team either. They just got out of a side of a bracket that had AC Milan and Napoli, which are other 2 big-name teams in the Serie A. And Napoli was the team that many people saw as the dark horse contender to win the Champions League, or at least get to the final this year before AC Milan stopped them. If you're not big into soccer, what I can say is this will be a good game. It's a highly anticipated matchup. And basically the only narrative that you need to know is Manchester City is a juggernaut, and they have been for years, but they can never win the whole thing being the Champions League. And Inter Milan is a team that hasn't done it in a while either, but they don't really have this curse that Man City has. So can Man City exorcise some of their demons? So I owe an apology to the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat are up 2-0 on the Boston Celtics, and they won both of those games on the road at TD Garden in Boston, and they're going back to Miami tomorrow, or they might be there right now, I don't know, but tomorrow they will play Game 3 on TNT. And I'm not going to say the Heat are going to sweep. I'm not that confident. But what I can say is I think they're going to win the series, and the Heat will be in the national championship in the NBA Final. So on my spreadsheet, when I did that episode, I guess that was 2 months ago. I don't know, at least a month ago. I determined that the Heat were the worst team in the playoffs I did not anticipate them making it out of the play-in tournament, and I thought that they were going to get swept in round one against the Bucks. I thought they would get lucky to win one of those games. What ended up happening is they beat the Bucks in 5, then they beat the Knicks, and now they have a 2-0 lead on the Celtics, and they won both of those games on the road. Jimmy Butler is insane. This team is just playing phenomenally. I don't really know what to say. I'm dumbfounded. But I was reminded, thank you, the internet, that the Heat were the number 1 seed in the playoffs last year. And, fun fact, this is the Final Four that we had in the bubble year in 2020. It was Lakers, Nuggets, Heat, Celtics, and our final was Lakers, Heat. I don't know if we're going to get that same final this year, but I think the Heat will be in the final this year. And man, whether it's Heat, Lakers, Heat, Nuggets, do not count the Heat out. This team does not know when to quit. They don't know how to quit, which is a good thing. And it's just awesome to watch. So, to the Miami Heat, I am sorry. I said you guys were the worst team in the playoffs by a lot about a month ago, according to the data. And I was very wrong. So it's hard for me to say, looking at Game 3, that the Celtics would win, like when it comes to my predictions. ESPN has no problem with it. Even on the road, currently ESPN has Boston with a 71% chance to win, and Vegas has the money line at Boston -3. Or excuse me, that's the spread, and then the money line is Boston -155. But no, I'm disagreeing with that. I think the Heat go up 3-1. I think the Heat go up 3-1. Boston, in a desperation attempt, wins the 4th game to send it back to TD Garden, and then the Heat win in 5. At the absolute longest, this series goes 6. But, man, I think Boston is out of this. This is the Heat's... Honestly, it's the Heat's series to lose. I'm not going to say they've won it. It's not over. They have to win 2 more games. But they're just... And it's not just a 2-0 lead. It is a commanding 2-0 lead that this team has. 123-116 in Game 1, 111-105 in Game 2. Those are close score lines. But Miami just looks like such a better team. They are dominating Boston on the court. I would like to see Boston make it a little more interesting and come back just so we can have a fun series. But man, this is all Miami right now. And it's hard for me to bet against them. So I'm going to say Miami in 5, and I'm excited to see Game 3 tomorrow night. All right, end of the show. Before I do Dog of the Day, I want to introduce a new segment. It's going to be quick, short, but it is going to be called the pregame playlist. Basically, I will tell you some of the music that I am currently listening to for you to put on your workout playlist, your pregame pump-up hype playlist. So today, for the pregame playlist in our inaugural selection, I'm going to shout out Mainskin. If you don't know who Mainskin is, they are a band. They are a rock band, originally from Rome, Italy. And they just released an album in January of this year called Rush. And it is really cool. I think if you just had to slap a single genre on it, it is rock, but it's a lot more than that. It's got these really cool, like funky bass lines and riffs that are just awesome to listen to. The groove is just insanely cool. So my 3 favorite songs that I would recommend off that album are Baby Said, Read Your Diary, and Supermodel. Check those out. Check out the whole album. Put those on your pregame hype playlist, your workout playlist. Give it a whirl. But Mainskin Rush, that album came out 4 months ago, and that's what I've been listening to for the last day or so. All right, Dog of the Day. This is your favorite segment. This is my favorite segment. Let's get into it. I talked about this guy a little bit earlier, but we're going to talk about him again. His name is Matthew Tkachuk, and he plays for the Florida Panthers. Shout out Matthew Tkachuk on being a Dog of the Day. Like I said, the Panthers played Game 1 against the Hurricanes. It was tied 2-2 going into overtime. Panthers thought they won it at the end of the first overtime, got called back. We ended up playing 4 overtime periods before Matthew Tkachuk finally buried it. That was his only point of the night, but man, it was so crucial and so important. It ended the game. I was, like the Heat, I was not high on the Panthers when the playoffs started. I apologize to the Fort Lauderdale and Miami fan bases. I was just going with what the numbers said, and as a result, I didn't really speak too well of your teams at the beginning of the playoffs, but proved me wrong, both in the Final Four, and I think the Panthers could win this series. I still like the Hurricanes, and I think that the Hurricanes are going to come back. It's not going to be a blowout. It's not going to be a one-sided series, but don't count the Panthers out of it. This is very much a 2-team series. This is not one team is going to wipe the floor with the other. How cool is it to be a fan of Miami, South Florida sports teams? Because you guys are killing it right now. So shout out Matthew Tkachuk. Also give a shout out to Sergei Bobrovsky just for that crazy stat line, 63 saves on 65 shots with a save percentage of .969. It's crazy. But yeah, the Panthers look really good. Excited for Game 2 tonight. It could go either way. I'm going to rock with the Hurricanes, but I'm not going to be surprised if the Panthers have a 2-0 lead going back to Fort Lauderdale. That is going to do it for this installment of the Dogs on the Hill podcast. Again, I apologize for the delay and the long gap between uploads. I'm back. We're going to be in this different setup for a little while, but the show keeps on rolling, and I will have you covered through the rest of the NHL, NBA playoffs. We'll talk about the Champions League Final when we get to that, and then when all of this is said and done, we'll get more into baseball. So, I hope to have you back next time. You can follow me at Dogs on the Hill podcast on Instagram, and you can email the show anytime for any questions or inquiries at dogsonthehillpodcast@gmail.com.